Welcome to Michael Potts F1, everything Formula One, but from a photographer's point of view. Round 8, the Monaco Grand Prix. We returned to that sunny place for shady characters as Monaco held the 70th edition of this legendary Formula One street race. The world's second smallest country hosted the biggest Formula One party. Monaco is unlike anything else on the F1 calendar, and no venue comes close to offering the Principality's unique glamour and spectacle. But let's be honest, the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix highlights reel, it's not going to be one that's rewatched all that often, if at all, by anyone. It's the first race in F1 history where the first 10 cars finished exactly in the same places as they started. There were only 4 overtakes during the entire 78-lap race. So how did the most boring race produce one of the most thrilling results? Overtaking is an issue here. The track is very narrow, there's no runoff, and the cars have becoming so large that unless it rains like we had in the past 2 years, the race can be very frustrating to watch. In the last 20 races, the driver starting on pole has won most of the races. This makes qualifying so important, and it probably produces the most exciting qualifying of the entire year. Here you can see the drivers pushing to extremes, with cars frightfully close to the barriers. I was photographing the qualifying session from the exit of the swimming pool, and here you can see how close the cars get to the barriers. And they're completely out of control for a few seconds as they hurtle towards the wall on the opposite side. This is exactly what happened to Pepe Martin in the F2 race. It's so hard to control the cars at this point, mainly because there's so little of them actually touching the ground, and they're moving towards the barriers with such momentum. Here's a shot that I took in free practice 1, and you can see the barrier is covered with advertising. By the time we got to qualifying, the cars had got so close to the barriers that they'd ripped off all of that advertising. And this was quite good news for us photographers because it meant that we could now shoot through the barriers without any advertising blocking our shots. And here you can get some great shots of the cars. It does look a little bit closer than it really is because I'm using a 70mm lens, but this is quite a challenging shot to achieve because they are moving quite quickly at this point. So here I'm shooting at a 4,000th of a second, and that's a speed that I don't usually use. But in Monaco, because I'm so close to the cars, I end up using much faster shutter speeds than I do on other tracks. It's also quite fun to take slow shutter speed shots as the cars move around this corner. Charles Leclerc was fastest in qualifying for the 3rd time in Monaco, but this was the fastest lap he has ever set. He was so brave around these streets, putting the car on the edge in every single corner. It was a magnificent drive. But not to take anything away from Charles, this was a mega drive. But it was Oscar Piastri that really stood out for me. He's had a bit of a funny year. He's put in some very strong performances, but the results haven't been there until this race. Putting his McLaren on the front row was an epic result. He managed to split the Ferraris and he outclassed his teammate. The strong result in qualifying for Ferrari and McLaren meant that Max was down in 6th place, his worst qualifying of the year. His teammate, Sergio Perez, was even further down in 18th position. That 18th place was upgraded to 16th when both Haas cars were sent to the back of the grid because they breached the rules on the size of their rear wing. Unfortunately, that didn't help the Mexican much as there was a huge crash on the first lap as the cars were going up Beau Rivage. I was photographing the first corner, so missed this entirely. It did look very dramatic, but thankfully it was also very, very safe. Formula One has developed a lot of safety measures for such a crash, and it was great to see that all of these features did their jobs, which meant that everyone walked away from this crash unscathed. The crash was deemed a racing incident, but Magnussen probably was the one that could have done most to prevent it. It's a bit sad for Perez, as this is another big crash following on from Imola. And while this wasn't entirely his fault, he shouldn't have been around the Haas's. He is driving a Red Bull, so he should have been qualifying much higher up. This result means that both Ferrari and McLaren have closed the gap considerably to Red Bull. Perez is out of contract for next year, but it does look like Red Bull will re-sign the Mexican, probably for 1 year. That announcement might be made at the next 2 or 3 Grand Prix. There was another crash on the opening lap, this time between teammates Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Gasly had performed better of the two during this race weekend, and he managed to get his car into the top 10 shootout for the first time this year. But on the opening lap, on the way to the tunnel, Ocon went for a move on his teammate that really wasn't on, launching his Alpine into the air and out of the race. This clash did have consequences, and while Ocon has accepted responsibility, he's also announced that he will be leaving the team. As yet, we do not know where he's going, but Mercedes and Audi could be viable options. Jack Doohan or Mick Schumacher are currently the favourite to take his seat. There are still rumours of Valtteri Bottas joining Williams, and we're expecting to hear a decision from Carlos Sainz about whether he joins Audi or not. Just about every team brought upgrades to this race, mainly to add downforce to the cars. So, big rear wings that push the car into the ground. That gives the drivers enough confidence to be able to turn on a dime. There were some monsters coming out of the pits. And while I was photographing Red Bull's changes, I did notice that they had a new member of their pit crew. Kolisi, the South African twice World Cup winning rugby captain, and probably loveliest man alive, had been roped into helping the team with their pit stop practice. If you are looking for a good read, his biography is one of the best out there. His story is truly amazing. I did get to speak to him a bit, and I took these shots of him with Chris Gale. He is a remarkable man. He was also joined by fellow South African rugby legend, the Beast, that is Tendai Matawera. West Indian cricket legend Chris Gale was at his fabulous best, plus supermodel Heidi Klum, models Willie Harlow, Kelsey Merritt, and Caroline Dower. Movie legend Michael Douglas, tennis star Maria Sharapova, fashion designer Tommy Hilfiger, and Qatar airline pilot Christina Carmela, and many, many, many more. As always, the drivers were very stylish, and they looked very well rested because this is a home race for most of them, not just Charles. Lewis arrived quite early on Thursday, and I was rather lucky to get these images of him as most of the photographers weren't there yet. He was wearing Dior with Cartier sunglasses. Many drivers arrived by boat this weekend. It is a lot quicker than dealing with Monaco traffic. I also got a ride in by boat this year, and it was a lot of fun. It's amazing coming through the harbour between all of the super yachts. Quite an experience. It was 20 years ago that I sat in these very seats watching my very first Formula One Grand Prix right here in Monaco. Monaco is always going to be a special location for me because this is where the magic came to life. I've been watching Formula One for as long as I can remember, but to actually see the cars in the flesh and hear the sounds of those screaming V10s, that was something that is remarkable, and it really it took that passion that I always had to the next level. This is also my 100th video, so big celebrations all round. Thank you for all of you who've joined me on this great adventure. I'm really glad that it happened here because this is my favourite race. It's full of memories and iconic corners and great vantage points. Monaco truly is the most beautiful place to watch Formula One from. And if you can, I highly recommend making the pilgrimage to this beautiful city. You've got lots of elevation changes, wonderful buildings as backdrops, the Azure Sea with the harbour teeming with yachts, everything you could possibly need to make an iconic Formula One photograph. My favourite spots include shooting from the top of the Fairmont Hotel. Here you have views of the most famous corner in motorsport. You can shoot the cars as they come down the hill from Massenet, around this ridiculously tight hairpin before heading down the hill to Portier. This is the slowest corner of the year, and it's the one the teams use to calibrate their gear ratios from. In Portier, we have a new view. There is some building work going on for a brand new complex called Mare Terra, and at the moment you can see the cars alongside the ocean for the first time in many years. It's also revealed this beautiful bridge, which has been consumed by the city for years and is now briefly on display. The tunnel delivers epic shots, and it's very cool being here during the race. The sound is incredible, but the cars push the air through at such a speed that it makes it really windy inside. It's quite an experience. You can shoot low down under the barriers and capture the cars as they come past. To achieve this, I shoot on continuous at 20 frames per second with a shutter speed of 5,000th of a second. I manually focus on the area where the car will be and then just wait for them to arrive. The Novelle chicane offers some fabulous angles looking straight down to Tabac, or just positioning the cars near the barriers. It can be very dramatic. This is one of the places where overtaking could happen. You can spend a huge amount of your race just waiting and waiting and waiting for something interesting to happen that doesn't. But if the lack of action over 75 laps was too much, you could check out the F2 feature race, which probably broke all sorts of Monaco records. The winner, Zach O'Sullivan, started in 15th place. He won the F2 Monaco Grand Prix from 15th place in a race against top drivers in identical machinery. His secret wasn't a series of late lunges at Saint-Devote. He actually started the race on hard tyres. He kept them on for the majority of the race, and 2 laps from the end there was a safety car which he timed perfectly, having a stop that was much shorter than everyone else, saving time and getting out in front of the first car. It was supreme race strategy. It left the runner-up, Isaac Hadjar, quite irate. But it was an absolutely brilliant drive from Zach O'Sullivan, and hopefully one year we'll see a driver from 15th place in the Formula 1 race win at Monaco. This year's Formula 1 race won't be remembered for all the tedium of all those laps where nothing happened, but it will be remembered for the result. It's a result that saw the city celebrate one of its own. For the first time in Formula 1 history, a local driver has won the Monaco Formula 1 Grand Prix. It's a country that has a native population of less than 10,000 people, but now one of those is a race winner. Charles Leclerc grew up on these streets. He took the bus to school on the racetrack. He watched every year as the stands went up with his father and his uncle Jules Bianchi, and the 3 of them shared this dream of winning races around the Principality. And sadly, neither his father nor Jules were alive to witness it, Charles still carried that dream, that memory, and he fought so hard to make it come true. He has qualified on pole position on 2 previous occasions, but he's been denied. He's had such bad luck here that there's talk of a Monaco curse preventing him from winning. But he put all of that to bed with a sensational drive, hounded on every corner by the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. 75 laps continuously without stopping. Charles took probably the most famous win in the history of the Monaco Grand Prix. And for that one Sunday afternoon, with everyone on the balconies screaming, every ship in the bay blasting their horns, and the Prince spraying champagne for the very first time, and everyone watching, whether at home or at the track, for that one brief, beautiful moment, everyone became Monegasque. Thank you so much for joining me for this look back at the Monaco Grand Prix. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. I do hope that despite laps and laps and laps of absolutely nothing happening during the race, you are still able to appreciate a really, really important Formula 1 weekend. Our next stop is Montreal in Canada, so I look forward to seeing you all there. And thank you so much for all of you who've been watching these videos. It really means a lot to me. Not only has it been such a privilege for me to share my photographs with you, but it's also really helped me develop as a photographer, because now I start thinking about taking photographs for this video, and that is helping me deliver better content for my clients. So you're really helping me enormously. I would love to hear your suggestions on what I could change in the videos, and if there's any content you'd like me to add. Thank you again, and see you in Montreal.